On February 13, 2017, a 45-year-old man was waiting in a Malaysian airport for his flight when unexpectedly, two women brushed up against him. The two women apologized and ran off, but what happened next was only something that are seen in movies. The man began to feel immense pain as he felt his muscles began to contract uncontrollably. He felt dizzy and was escorted to the airport medical clinic, where he was then transported to the hospital by ambulance. On the way to the hospital, the man's heartbeat flatlined and he was pronounced dead. The man who just died was no ordinary man. His name was Kim Jong-nam, the half-brother of North Korea's dictator Kim Jong Un. The question is, who wanted the half-brother of North Korea's most powerful man dead, and why? Kim Jong-nam was born on May 10, 1971, and was the eldest son of North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il. He once was thought of to be in favor of succeeding his father. However, early troubles would soon cast doubt on those plans. Early on, his father had suspected that he didn't have the killer instinct to rule a dictatorship, and he was assigned to manage the country's information technology systems instead of managing head squads. An incident in 2001 would later cement the fact that Kim Jong-nam will never be the leader of North Korea. In May, Kim Jong-nam was arrested in Japan after attempting to enter the country using a forged Dominican Republic passport under a false name. He told Japanese authorities he wanted to visit Tokyo Disneyland, a claim that drew international media attention and embarrassment for North Korea, especially for his father. After the incident, Jong-nam lived mostly in exile, spending time in countries such as China and Macau. In 2008, Kim Jong-il suffered a stroke, which led to health complications and led to his death in 2011. After his death, Kim Jong-un would take over as dictator of North Korea. Jong-nam was critical of his half-brother, stated in an email to Japanese journalists, calling him a joke to the outside world, and his rule will not last long. Those words would not be forgotten by a new North Korean dictator. Over the next several years, Jong-nam had dodged assassination attempts on him, which eventually led to him sending a letter to Jong-un asking for mercy for himself and his family. Kim Jong-nam arrived at Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia around 9 a.m. to catch an Air Asia flight to Macau. He was traveling quietly with no bodyguards or other family and was just another man in a crowded airport. It was a usual day until two women bumped into Jong-nam, causing hysteria in the once busy but orderly airport. An Indonesian woman, wearing torn jeans and a gray sleeveless top, slipped from behind the column and proceeded to place her hands over his eyes and then wiped her hands over his mouth as it was in a playful manner. She yelped, "Sorry, sorry," as she ran off to disappear into the crowd and into the bathroom. Then, a second woman from Vietnam, wearing a white jumper with the word LOL printed on it, threw her arms over her shoulders and rubbed her hands across Jong-nam's face and mouth. She briefly apologized before quickly running off in the same direction as the other woman. Seconds later, Jong-nam began to feel dizzy after the liquid substance that was rubbed over his face began to take effect. He began to feel pain as his muscles all over his body started to contract as if they were being pulled tight by invisible wires, jerking him into a rigid, uncontrollable grip. As Jong-nam ferociously wiped his face, he staggered across the airport looking for help from airport staff to direct him to the bathroom. He managed to find airport staff, who escorted him to 3 police officers, where they brought him to the airport medical clinic. Nurses took Jong-nam to an oxygen tank, as he struggled to breathe as his diaphragm and intercostal muscles, who were once contracted uncontrollably, began to fatigue, causing muscle paralysis. As the situation was becoming increasingly severe by the second, Jong-nam suffered a seizure and was then loaded into an ambulance and rushed to the hospital. Unfortunately, approximately 15 minutes after the substance was rubbed on his face, he was pronounced dead before reaching the hospital. What was the substance that was rubbed all over Jong-nam's face? The substance the two women rubbed on his face was a form of VX, which is a nerve agent and classified as a highly toxic chemical weapon. VX interferes with the nervous system, causing muscles to contract uncontrollably and could lead to respiratory failure. Even a tiny amount absorbed through the skin can be fatal. It was speculated that it was VX2 rather than VX. VX2 is not as volatile compared to VX, which could explain how the women did not have the same serious side effects as Jong-nam, since they were able to immediately wash their hands in the bathroom. Who were the women involved in Kim Jong-nam's death, and did they act alone? Siti Aisyah was a 25-year-old Indonesian woman from a rural area near Jakarta, Indonesia. She had limited formal education and worked various low-paying jobs to support herself and her young son. Siti also engaged in prostitution and dreamed of a life where she made enough money so she didn't have to resort to doing those activities. The other woman, Don Di Hong, was a young Vietnamese woman in her late 20s, hailing from a small rural village in northern Vietnam. Like many people from her community, she dreamed of a life beyond familiar fields and pursued her passion for entertainment and TV. She even appeared on Vietnamese Idol, but only lasted 20 seconds before her run on the show ended. In late 2016, early 2017, both women were approached separately by undercover North Korean men posing as TV producers. The men approached them with a proposition, and a camera prank videos. Locals were being recruited to star in these pranks, with promises of payment ranging from $100 to $200 per stunt, a sum that felt significant to the women. The women were promised and infatuated with the idea of being celebrities and were ready to leave their old lives behind. A man named Hong Song-hak, who used the alias Chang, was a North Korean intelligence officer who became in charge of Siti, supervising her on practice runs of smearing hot sauce on men's faces at Kuala Lumpur Airport. The women were told the next prank would occur on February 13th, the day where Kim Jong-nam was assassinated. On that day, Hong and Siti stood inside the airport waiting for Jong-nam to appear. Once spotted by Hong, he began to instruct Siti on the following steps. He placed a VX2 on her hands, instructed her to target Jong-nam, apologized to him, and quickly run to the bathroom to wash her hands. Hong told Siti another woman would also be joined in on the prank. Soon after, Don would be following Siti with the same instructions. There were 4 other North Korean men who made sure the events went according to plan. Hong, who first dispensed the VX2 to Siti, ran to the bathroom to wash his hands. Another oversaw Siti and Don. A third monitored the attack from a coffee shop. A fourth rushed past the 2 women, possibly to signal the confirmation of the attack, and a 5th man who followed Jong-nam and watched as he resigned in the medical clinic to be loaned up into the ambulance. Malaysian officials did not know the significance of the event that just occurred. First, Kim Jong-nam's name on the diplomatic passport was Kim Chol, which is the Korean equivalent of John Smith. Secondly, they initially ruled the death as a heart attack. So not only did they not know the real name behind Kim Chol, they also didn't detect the VX2 poison that was used to kill Jong-nam. What puzzled the authorities was what was found in his backpack. There was $120,000 divided into 4 bricks of $100 bills. It was suggested that possibly he received the money from the CIA in exchange for information about his half-brother's regime. After reviewing the CCTV footage, Malaysian officials realized that there was a lot more to the story than just a man who died from a heart attack. They were able to determine the real identity of Kim Chol and had a clear footage of Siti and Don's interactions with him that led to his death. The women would be captured with relative ease the next morning. Don was captured when she returned to the airport, and Siti was captured in her room at the Flamingo Hotel in Kuala Lumpur. The Malaysian chief of police interrogated the women and did not believe the story of being recruited to perform pranks on men for a TV show. The women were sent to jail as they awaited their trials. Siti was very naive and even thought being in jail was part of the prank. When Indonesian officials visited her in jail, she asked when could she leave and complained about not receiving payment for her last prank. The scope of what was truly happening didn't set in for her until Indonesian officials showed her a newspaper of the events that took place. When she realized it was not a prank show and that Kim Jong-nam was the person who she had helped killed, she broke down in tears. The defense teams of the woman had a difficult case and had to prove the woman unknowingly committed a crime. The CCTV clearly showed the woman having the VX2 substance poured onto the hands, rubbed it all over Jong-nam's face, and then ran to the bathroom to presumably wash their hands. The prosecutors argued the women clearly knew it was poison on their hands since they quickly washed it off. However, the defense claimed the women did not know it was poison. Both women were being charged with murder. Siti's lawyer, Gu Song-sang, stated that Siti cannot be charged with murder under Malaysian law because there needs to be intent, and since she was tricked into committing the crime, she cannot be charged with murder. In March 2019, as Siti's trial was still ongoing, her charges were abruptly dropped. She was released and returned to Indonesia. Dawn then has her charges reduced to causing hurt by dangerous means and pled guilty. She was convicted of the lesser sentence and was released in May 2019 for time served. The four North Korean men, Oh So-hak, Ri Ji-hyun, Ri Jae-nam, and Oh Jong-gil, who Malaysian officials identified cultivated the murder plot, fled to North Korea after the attack. Malaysian officials could not locate or identify the men in time before their escape. The men were never charged with anything related to this incident, since North Korea does not extradite their citizens. South Korean and United States officials believe the assassination was ordered by North Korea's leader Kim Jong Un and carried out by North Korean state agents, though the capital of North Korea, Pyongyang, denies involvement.